see you finally got your 17th floor office.
Yeah, I'm in my secure bunker, Paul.
Good idea.
How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Just fine. I just got off a Black Robe Regiment huddle. Are you familiar with the Black Robe Regiment?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're coming alive.
There's Jeff in his automobile. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay.
So you in your
Good.
car, huh?
Yeah, is this gonna work okay?
Yeah. Oh no, it works great.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Gives you a brand new background.
I know. I've got to figure out how to hold it or make it work.
Yeah, that's
So,
pretty cool. So
Figure it out. Yep.
yeah, very good.
How's the week, gentlemen?
Good. Had a good week. We're
Good.
I have some notes and stuff to kind of get us started here, and yeah, I had a good week. How about you, Paul?
Well, mine's been fine. We're getting the house painted. They're going to paint it tomorrow, so they've been masking off everything and washing everything.
Oh, outside? Outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
You guys, you had some cool weather, right?
Yeah, it's been nice. I've been under
It
the
has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you at, Jeff?
So-
Are you in state, Jeff, or?
I am. I'm presenting to Shane Krauser's group tonight, so I
Oh,
kind of
okay.
made a day of it up here,
Gotcha.
just getting other things done. And so I'm good for about 45 minutes. If I've got to go a little early, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, no, that's good. That's
But,
great.
Yeah.
I already started the recording, so we're going
good.
here.
Okay.
And,
Wonderful.
We'll wait for Ken to be on. I think he's going to be on. Hopefully he will. He didn't send me a note or let me know otherwise. So I sent out some notes earlier. You guys probably did not see them. If you did, that's good. If not, don't
I've been
worry
on the
about
road. I saw him right before I opened the Zoom.
it. So one of the questions I wanted to first, of course, we're 2 weeks and what, 2 days past the election. And,
Post-election.
I wanted to ask you, I want to get your guys' opinion on why do you think Trump won? And I'm going to give you like 4 different potential reasons. And you can rank them or you can pick one or, however you want to discuss it. But the leading theories are, of course, the border. Right, the border situation and that entire debacle. The candidate, was she just such a terrible candidate that she had no chance of winning? Was it inflation / economy? Was that the big factor? Was it the wars, the Ukraine war, the upset in the Middle East, or a combination of all, or rank them any way you want? So. One at a time, and we can start with
We'll
you,
let Paul go first.
Yeah, you start, Paul.
Yeah.
Coward.
You,
Okay.
We'll let him run into
Tell
the
us-
ambush first.
yeah, tell us what you think. Tell us what you think is going on, and I'm going to see if I can put this on speaker. Yeah, that works.
Well, if I don't want to be too facetious, but I think as Joe Biden told us one time on television, they have the greatest fraud program in the country or in the world with their voting, and I think it failed them, amongst other things. I think the economy was really what drove people to the polls and caused them to vote for Donald Trump. I think the border is a big issue, but I don't know that it's would have been the driver, because I think we would have seen a change anyway. I think the realization of what all these people coming into the country, and especially with all the publicity the criminals have been getting, I think there would have been a pushback that something would have had to happen. I don't think anybody believes that we're going to get physically involved in the war. That's my opinion. I think we will, but I don't think a large part of the population believes that. And finally, I think the candidate, I mean, she just showed us her true self so often that even the hardest core people had to say, I just can't push that button. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
So you're coming from the point of view of a combination of all those things.
Yeah, a combination of all those, but I think the economy is the thing that people, you know, every Friday you find out you don't have enough money in the envelope to get food for the kids, and that's a real driver. That's those of us in the prepping world believe that hungry kids are going to be the reason your neighbors come to your house with a gun to feed their kids. And so when the kids' food starts running thin, people's attitudes get pretty harsh.
So Ken Bennett has joined us. Hello, Ken.
Hi, Don. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Ken.
So Jeff is also in his car, Ken. So I see you're in your car.
All right. That's right.
Yes.
You guys, make sure you keep your seatbelts on.
Oh, we got seatbelts on, and I'm watching the road. So if my eyes aren't on the camera, don't.
Oh, so you're driving, huh?
Well, I'm about to pull over and let my son drive here.
Oh, okay. Great.
I'm
Well,
gonna-
welcome to your son. So we just started discussing post-election, post 2 weeks election. What do each of you think was the primary reason for Trump winning? And was it one thing? Was it several things? And kind of the general categories are the border situation, their candidate, inflation / the economy, or the overseas wars, the Ukraine and the Middle East, etc. So, and Jeff's up next, so let's see what Jeff has to say.
All right.
Well, as we discussed last week, even with all that, and each one of those is a catastrophe, Don. You know, Trump won, and he did, in my opinion, get a mandate. But as Ken told us last week, it really was narrow in those 3 swing states, and that, you know, just losing 120, we won by 240,000 total in those 3 swing states. So a swing of just a little bit in those states, and it could have been a different story. But I do agree with Paul that in the end, as Washington said, it's a shame we don't see until we feel. And I do think a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are struggling to pay their rent. I know this firsthand. You know, within my church that I go to, people are really struggling a lot more than they were 4 years ago just to provide the basics. And so I think people did get out in hopes to do better. But I also think the transgender issue wasn't on your list. But I agree with Jordan Peterson that this is probably, you know, one of the, if not the most fundamental truths in nature, that there are men and women. And, you know, when you, you know, can't accept that fact and are willing to go to the mat on that and not see how this is damaging, not only to society in general, but to our young women and women who are in athletics, sports. And, you know, I personally know, because I do train professional triathletes, I know women that have retired from bicycling, which is the #1 sport that transgender women who are men have destroyed. And the triathlon, you know, is right behind that. But really in women's cycling, it's really devastating what's going on there. So I think between that, and that's an obvious truth, you know, I think people start to look and see, what else am I being lied to on? And I think that's really opened people's eyes. My only disappointment is that it wasn't 80-20, you know, and again, I don't want to argue. I do think we have a mandate. I think Trump has a mandate. I think we need to push forward, you know, because you're hearing a lot of pundits say, it wasn't a mandate and it was barely a win. It wasn't even a total majority of the population, even though he had a majority of the votes against Biden. It was still only 49.9% and these kind of things. I totally disagree with that. And I do not think we ought to pull any punches in using legal constitutional authority to push the policies and principles and values which have been voted into office. But having said that, it does scare me of, even though we have all these things that were in Trump's favor, that you still have, what, 48% of America's population thinking otherwise. And so don't think that I'm not for pushing, but I'm just bringing that as a fact that scares me.
Okay, so you're thinking sort of like Paul, that there are a combination of things. Maybe the economy weighted more than the others.
Yeah, I just think when you go with the economy on one side and the transgender issues on the other side, you've got everything in between. It is really hard to understand how that didn't just throw 90% of our population into the Trump camp. But yes, so I think that they weighed heavily on those who were willing to think about it and weigh the different issues.
Okay, so Ken, would you like to weigh in on this now?
Yes, yeah. I moved over to the passenger seat here, so
Oh, okay.
don't worry about it. I agree with what both Jeff and Paul have said. I think the economy was by far the largest factor, but I think there were other factors, just like Jeff said, but I think Paul said it earlier when I was just logging in. When one thing like the economy is going so badly, and then as a voter, a citizen, you start to realize, yeah, but I also feel like I'm being lied to about the border, and I also feel like I'm being lied to about this and that and transgender, and you know, you can't call a man. Yeah, I think those are other things, but I would put 75-80% on the economy, and then I would put these 4 or 5 other issues at 5% each or something. But I think the big thing was the economy. But there's a lot of things to the economy, and but you know, having to struggle to feed your family, pay the rent, to do those things on a week after week after month basis, I think that by far was the biggest factor. But as Jeff just mentioned, and as I kind of pointed out last week, even on the popular vote, Biden won the popular vote in 2020 by 4 or 5 million. It's probably like 52-48. Trump is going to win the popular vote this time by 2 or 3 million. So it's flipping to 49-51. And so what happens, we're not, if the voters are, you know, voter 1 to 100, 1 being the far left and 100 being the far right, we're not changing the voters 1 through 45. They're going to stay with the leftmost person or whoever has a D behind their name. 55 through 100 on the right, you know, they're going with the Republican. It's 1 or 2 or 3 voters in the middle that, you know, if you're voter 48, 49, and you voted for Biden 4 years ago, but because of the things we're talking about, you flipped over and you became voter 51 and 52 for Trump this time. And it's very small margins right in the middle that tilt back and forth. And that's, I think, what happened. But the biggest issue I would attribute it to was the economy.
Yeah, and you would think that, I think that, you know, the everyday person who really doesn't follow politics every minute of every day, right? The biggest thing that's going to affect their lives is going to be the economy and the cost of gas and food and everything. That's what's slapping them every day. You know, they might hear tidbits about some of the other things, but that's a big one. Now, like Jeff said, if you've got a daughter that's competing in sports, you're quite probably highly involved with this transgender issue, right? So, but the normal everyday person, you know, everybody, all you guys probably follow politics pretty closely. and stay tuned to it. Obviously you do, and I do too. But so I wanted to give you guys a little bit of information that I kind of dug out of some of the statistics around the country. But first I wanted to ask if Ken, if you had seen any data on the different congressional districts and how Kari Lake did in the districts where they voted for a Republican.
Kari Lake won all the Republican, well, no, the exception of Maricopa County.
Yeah, did she get as many votes as those Republican congressmen did in their district? That's kind of what I was curious about.
No, I haven't seen that data yet.
Okay.
It really takes some granular
Oh yeah, I know.
data being released by the county to show how Kari Lake did in a congressional district.
Yeah,
And I haven't seen that yet come out of any of the counties.
right.
What I do know is that across the entire state of Arizona, for every 10 votes that Trump got, she got 9.
Yeah,
And some counties were higher than that. Yavapai County, where I live, probably the second heaviest concentration of Republicans, were only behind Mojave County over Lake Havasu and Bullhead City. And she got 94% of the vote that Trump got in Yavapai County. Mojave County was up in the 93 range, but Maricopa was 89.5. So you round that to 90, and that's what I'm saying. And I think statewide it was 90.3. So right around the 90 percentile range. 9 out of 10 voters who voted for Trump voted for Lake. But that 10% is not insignificant. I mean, I think she's 180,000 votes behind Trump.
yeah.
And,
Wow.
And then the opposite happened on the Democrat side. Rarely does a Senate candidate outperform their U.S. presidential candidate. But it happened. Gallego got about 6 more votes out of 100 than Harris got.
Wow.
So when Lake is 10 votes out of 100 behind Trump, and Gallego is 6 points out of 100 ahead of Harris, it ends up being a loss for Lake. And that,
Yeah.
I know that sounds just intrinsically unacceptable because it doesn't have to be voters who voted for Trump and Gallego. I don't think there were that many of those.
Yeah. Right.
But there were obviously, out of 10 votes for Trump, Lake only got 9, and most of those other voters that didn't vote for Lake probably didn't vote for Gallego, but I'm sure there were independents and others in the middle that did. But
Sure.
you know, the strong Republicans did not go for Gallego, other than a few, I'm sure. But she just performed about 10% below Trump's performance statewide.
So here's some data that I don't know if you guys had seen or not. This is based on 2020 and 2024 versus 2024. Starting off with New Jersey in 2020, Trump lost by 16 points. In 2024, he only lost by 5 in New Jersey. In California, he lost by 29 in 2020. And in this year, he lost by 17. In New York, he lost by 23 in 2020. And in 2024, he lost by 12. And in Illinois, he lost by 17 in 2020. And in 2024, he lost by 8. So he increased.
And in every one of those situations, whatever that margin of change was, like the last one was 8, it only takes 4
Right.
voters
Yeah.
moving from one side to the other to make an 8-point swing. So whatever the swing was, you divide it by half, because when full 4 voters change from A to B, you take 4 away from A and you add 4 to B.
Right.
And so 4 voters make an 8-point swing.
Yeah.
6 voters make a 12-point swing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the, if you could say there was a landslide, that's the landslide. As far as the electoral college, as Jeff mentioned last week, it really came down to 3 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those 3 states have 44 electoral votes. Trump won those 3 states by less than 240,000 votes total.
Yeah.
So you divide that by half. If 120,000 voters in those 3 states had gone for Harris instead of Trump, she'd have got 44 electoral votes. She had 226 plus 44. She'd have been at 270, and Trump would have been at 268.
Mm-hmm.
But on the popular vote swing, yes, there was a very dramatic shift of 5, 6, 7 out of 100 voters leaving the Dems and going to Trump.
Now here's some other data, and I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna share this up on the screen, and you guys with your phones. I don't know how well you'll see this or not, but I'll try to interpret it for you. Okay. This has to do with how much money people spent in the election. Now it starts with the president.
Oh my gosh.
And then it goes down to the senators, right? And the Senate races are I think the most interesting. Let me get this up now. I'm not very good at this sharing stuff, so
You did it pretty well last week.
You should have learned that in kindergarten, Don.
yeah, I know.
Okay, I got my glasses on. So.
I'm trying to I have to coordinate this with the recording too, because it's a different screen. So here's the money that Harris spent. Estimated $881 million to Trump's 356. Okay.
Wow.
Now that's been pretty well talked about, discussed. The word was kind of going around that she was $20 million in debt. She was actually paying the celebs to come to her.
Well, let me ask something about that, Don.
Sure.
If I could, because in finding that out, which, maybe I'm naive and just didn't realize how much that happened. But I got to tell you, I'd be embarrassed if I was Oprah or some of these celebrities that are willing to sell their soul. I mean, that is, do I have a bad person? Is that just the way it is?
No,
I
don't think they especially thought she was a great candidate. I just think she paid them to endorse her, right? Basically, it's what happened.
Right.
You gotta remember,
We don't even know if they voted for her, right? So, yeah, it's pretty.
Well, I'm just wondering, is that historically what a lot of candidates do, is pay these celebrities? I have just not, again, maybe I'm, living in a hole.
Yeah.
But I just haven't heard that come to light.
Yeah.
Until this election cycle.
I never heard it before either. I've never heard of that. But
it almost seems. It almost, to me, it seems like if it's not illegal, it should be.
Yeah, yeah.
To be, that's, in effect.
It happens in the Republican Party too. Not so much with celebrities at times, maybe, I don't know. But, I lost in the primary to a MAGA candidate who had Trump's endorsement. The largest single expenditure of his campaign was, it was more than 10% of all the money that he spent about $330,000, and the largest single expenditure was a $40,000 check to Mar-a-Lago. And I kind of wondered, well, maybe that's what it takes to get a Trump endorsement.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, somehow that it seems fishy, but I guess a lot of people that are in the the deep bowels of how all this works thinks maybe a lot of it's fishy.
Now
so.
here's some of the Senate data. So here's the race in Ohio. Sherrod Brown spent $88 million and Bernie Moreno spent $21 million. Okay, and Bernie Moreno won that race, right? In Montana, John Tester spent $84 million and Tim Sheehy spent $22 million, and Sheehy won that race. If you go down to Arizona, Ruben Gallego, $55 million, and Carrie Lake spent $18 million. So she got outspent almost 3-1. In Pennsylvania, Bob Casey spent $51 million and Dave McCormick spent $26 million. I also heard today that the Supreme Court reiterated in Pennsylvania again that they cannot count those ballots. They want to sneak into the recount. So Wisconsin, Democrat spent double. Michigan spent 4 times. And in Nevada spent more than twice. So that kind of gives you a picture of the different Senate races, and it doesn't always mean, money's going to win, the winning horse is going to have all the money. So there's always a lot of talk about money, and I know a lot of the candidates, they send you a letter saying, I'm being outspent 3-1, and then people find out, well, you won, so you must have had a better message, right? Something wasn't working for them. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting data. I'm going to go back to the screen now. And
so the question with that, Don, is, are
Yeah.
the Democrats better at fundraising? Do they have more zealous supporters? Or, is the ultra wealthy class, giving it to them? Or where's the money coming from?
well, one of the things that's interesting is some of those Senate candidates did not get any money from Mitch McConnell. One of them was Carrie Lake. So
Yeah, I don't think she got a dime from the National Senate Committee.
yeah, neither did Rick Scott in Florida. He didn't give him any money because he opposed him in that last go around about Senate leadership. So,
Oh, wow.
and, yeah. So and that Senate money fund that's a pretty large chunk of money. So I don't know how much that had to do with it, but yeah, it's I think kind of cause-wise they might have more money, and they've got remember they've got the Hollywood bucks, probably the majority of the Hollywood money going to the Democrats, right? The billionaires in Silicon Valley, they're pretty much the Gates and all them. They're pretty much in the Democrat camp. So, but today they're all losers.
Yeah. Well, Don, my short answer to your question, are the Democrats better at raising money? The short answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're probably right. Now here's some other data that I don't know if you guys heard about. So Biden was +5 in 2020 with rich people considered anybody making over $100,000 a year. Okay. Biden was +5. Harris ended up +8 in that category. People that said they had no religion, Harris was +40. Okay. Never been to a religious service, she was +26. And college graduates, she was +8. And postgraduate, she was +24. So her constituency basically, and this is something that got talked about on another show that I watched quite a bit. Her constituency was her Democratic base was so-called the wealthy, over $100,000, college educated, and non-religious. Now you're not going to win too many elections if that's your base, right? You're just not.
Yeah.
And then I also just read an article today about the Christian vote was way up this election, and Christians had a lot to do with turning the election. So I hope that's true. I don't know if you guys heard about that or not.
Ken, I have a question though. Ken, last week So I'm getting different numbers, and I wonder if we could verify that. Last week, we had talked about the number of people voting in this election to be about the same as in 2020. And then I heard from a different source that is, also has been reliable in the past, that we were down about 5 million. So I'm just wondering, Ken, you keep your eye on this better than anybody I know. So have you verified those numbers? Are you confident in that's true?
Here, I have another chart to share with you guys. Here's the votes by elections. And the yellow line,
good. Okay, well,
yeah,
this is
the
what we
yellow
wanted
line,
to
the
say.
yellow line there, dotted line is about 65 million. Okay. So you can see, generally they averaged about 65 million across the board, except for 2020, which is,
So it did go up a little bit.
which is above 80 for Joe Biden. And the last two elections, Trump was at 75 and 73. So yeah, it's been pretty steady until 2020 was kind of and probably, people believe because of COVID and because of 100% mail-in ballot in some states, that's the result,
Wow.
So
There seems to be something wrong with this chart.
I'll look at some data in other states, but in Arizona, it was almost identical. We
yeah,
had 3.4 million people vote in 2020, and we had 3.4 million vote in 2024.
Huh.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's
and
the
then
popu-
somebody also said that I heard somebody talking about those two numbers in 2020, and if you add all those people up, that's many more than there are registered voters in the country. So I don't know if that's true or not either.
I don't think that's true.
That would be about 150 million. Does that sound like there's that many registered voters, Ken? What do you think?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think is that in 2024 or 2020?
2020, those two add up to about 150 million.
Well, I questioned that big of a drop off in 24 because I was looking at the popular vote
Yeah.
for 2024, and the last number I saw, Trump was at 74, and Harris was at 72.
Okay.
Mm.
So sure.
74 and a half. So there's 146, 47 million right there. So
Yeah.
I don't think we're down much I don't think we're down as much as this
Graph is showing.
graph is showing, because I think we had around 150 million in both years.
Yeah.
But
Well, that.
I think Trump enthused. Trump got 12 million more votes than Romney got in 12. But what I think frustrated Trump is that Biden got 15 million more votes than Obama. And
Yeah.
that makes no sense,
Right.
because, as far as the charisma and excitement that a Democratic candidate causes in the Democrat voter base,
Right.
Obama is heads over tails better than Biden, of course. But
Yeah, and he was out
I
and
think it's
about.
a fact.
Yeah, he was out and about, and Biden was in his
Yeah.
basement.
Yeah. So, but I actually think that Trump has a very unique effect on voters that support him and voters that hate him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And his presence in the race, I mean, I think he kind of caught people by surprise in 2016 when the polls were showing that Hillary Clinton was ahead, and then he, even though she won the popular vote, he got the electoral vote. But after they lost with Clinton, and then they vilified him for 4 years in his first term, I think his presence and his persona really invigorates those who like him and those who hate him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what drove the bump in voters from 2016 to 2020. But I don't think there was as big a drop off as that graph showed from 2020 to 2024. I think both of them are going to be right in the 145, 150 million range.
Okay, so I have one more chart to more chart to share here, and I want to get to it real quick. Have you guys look at this if I can find it. Here it is. This is the shift in voters by demographics. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, no.
It's kind of small. The only two areas that shifted to the blue side are seniors over 65 and white college women. All other categories, and this is at the bottom, we start with blacks, Asian, Hispanic, 18 to 29, 30 to 44, female, 45 to 64, male, white, and white non-college women and white non-college men all shifted red. Now that's pretty interesting. I mean, out of the people you talked, Ken, in the middle of the scale, in the 100 scale, changing votes, that's where it happened right there, right?
Yeah, and several of those categories overlap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got, sounded like you were reading, obviously, race, age, and gender.
Yeah.
And obviously people are in all three of those categories at the same time. But
yeah,
I think it was a shift of 3 or 4, maybe 5 people in the middle. Voters 47, 48, 49, shifting over to be voters 51 and 52.
So
on the right.
Here's my next question for you guys. This isn't a very important thing, but it was just kind of an interesting news note. You guys heard about Joe Scarborough going down to Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, him and Mika.
Yeah.
You're trying to make sure they didn't get on the list.
What do each of you think is going on there? Any idea? Any thoughts?
I think they're trying to save their show.
Oh, maybe they're trying to save MSNBC. They're on MSNBC, right? Any thoughts, Ken or Jeff?
No, I don't follow Scarborough at all.
No, I don't either. I mean, he's gone crazy here
response.
for years. So, yeah, I just found it curious that they'd go down there and talk to Trump. So.
Yeah, I have no idea, Don. If I had opinion on that, I'd be wrong anyway. So better to stay quiet and people not know I'm an idiot on this topic here.
Well, you can't follow everything, right? Yeah, I understand that.
I think one of the big questions, Don, is, about Trump's ongoing issues in his lawsuits. And, these prosecutors basically wanting to just, instead of putting them to bed, to postpone them indefinitely.
Yeah.
Well, indefinitely meaning until the end of his term. And then, coming back at him. So I think that's very interesting. And I think the constitutional issue would be, can Trump pardon himself? And if so, will he do it? And, what will be the reaction? Because, if he does do it, there's going to be constitutional authorities on both sides saying that's preposterous and this, that, and the other. And so I don't know if he's thinking about it or not, just to put it to bed. And I don't know what the reaction would be, but I have not heard that talked about on any station anywhere.
Right. My opinion would be, I think that Trump will serve out his 4 years, and if these things are still if there's actually a hint of anything going on, I think the appeals courts are going to throw it all out anyway before the end of the 4 years. But if they don't, and we elect another Republican president like J.D. Vance,
Right, he could do it after.
They would probably pardon him and be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a
So-
clever move might be for him to resign the day before his term ends and let JD become the president. Pardon him.
There you go.
So bad.
Well, that's basically what Nixon and Ford went on, right? When Nixon
Yeah.
resigned, Ford pardoned him, and then that upset the electorate so much that Jimmy Carter became our president the next term.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
But what the cost of that would be
Yeah.
if it does happen, and what kind of political?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it'd be a good discussion. I have another constitutional question. Ken, Jeff, and Paul. I'm trying to think, this has to do with the Senate Majority Leader. When the country was first formed, there was no Senate Majority Leader. And the first vice president, who I think was John Adams, who was George Washington's vice president, right, Jeff?
Yes,
Yeah. He was the Senate Majority Leader
correct.
at that time. So can the current vice president become the Senate Majority Leader? And could he not accept the Senate Majority Leader that's offered to him in the Senate and say, no, I'm the Senate Majority Leader, you're not?
I don't think, look, he is the president of the Senate as per the Constitution.
Right.
And if you look at the vice president's role, John Adams all the way through Calhoun and even later, John Calhoun, when he was vice president, did not feel that he had the power or authority to speak while in the Senate. And so he would write talks for other senators to give for him. But he did have a deciding vote. And so, a lot of these things, like the filibuster, are not set in the Constitution. They're either, the Senate makes its own rules as the, Congress does.
Right.
So, the Senate could change its rules, but my opinion, and this is totally shooting from the hip, just based on American history and what I know, I think it would be a precedent, and I think you'd have to look into the rules of the Senate, and I think the rules most likely say that it's got to be a senator and not the vice president. That the vice president is the president of the Senate. And by the way, the first constitutional, I say that, but some people say there was something else, but really, the first constitutional conundrum we got into was about how a president could relieve somebody from his cabinet.
Yeah.
And did you also need advice and consent from the Senate? And it was decided, no, you didn't. That was the precedent Washington set. But that followed us all the way up to Lincoln and the Johnson administration afterwards, because remember, Johnson was impeached over, not having the Senate be able to dictate who's going to be in his cabinet.
So in Congress, in the House of Representatives, the Speaker does not have to be a congressman,
Correct.
right? He can be.
Correct. But also in the Senate, Jeff, isn't the Constitution stipulate that the vice president only votes when there's a tie?
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah,
Vice
and so
president.
that was the tie. Adams was the vice president when that came forward, and it came in front of the Washington administration, and Adams cast that deciding vote that no, the president does not need, I'm glad the advice and consent of the Senate to relieve somebody that's in his cabinet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the precedent ever since.
So I think the question is, does the Senate Majority Leader have to be a member of the Senate?
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's
Historically, it's never happened.
yeah.
Um,
But we don't know if that's the rule or not, right? When did
it'd be really,
when did the first Senate Majority Leader, when did that occur? Do we know? Anybody know?
Oh.
Yeah, we'll research that over Thanksgiving.
well, I don't think it was pre-Civil War.
Yeah, probably after
So,
that. Huh?
I mean, but it's a great question on both to research this week.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is one of the reasons we do this podcast.
That's
It's great.
right. Yeah, we're doing this just for
Yeah.
that reason. So I want to thank you all for being on. We're at the 6:15 mark, Jeff. So that's 45 minutes, pretty
Yep.
much on the
So-
nose.
Yep.
I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Hope it all goes great for you guys. And I wouldn't tell you to eat too much because we always eat too much, right? It's too good. It's too good not to eat too much.
That's right.
And we'll be back together. We won't have a podcast next week. We'll be back together on December. I think it's December 4th or 5th. I'm not wrong.
I think it's the 5th.
Is it the 5th?
believe so.
December 5th. So thanks again to everybody. I really appreciate you guys joining us on your cell phones from your automobiles. That's great. Keeps the rhythm going here. And thanks for
Absolutely.
all
Thank you, Don,
yeah.
for preparing all those good questions.
Oh yeah, thanks for all the
Everybody
input. And God bless your families, and God bless the United States of America. And we will see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Amen.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye now.
Hey, Don,
Yes, sir.
nobody mentioned guest.